I just came back from watching Gladiator II, and oh boy, am I disappointed. I mean, what did I expect? It's an action movie made for the masses, set up in a loose historical background that pretends to be ancient imperial Rome, and it's not a movie made for people that are actually into history. But there's always a silver lining to everything. So why don't we take this opportunity to look at the real coins that were circulating in the Roman Empire when the story of the movie takes place? This way we can compare what we saw on the movie and what happened in reality by looking at material evidence. Sounds like a fun proposition. Of course, before we start, spoiler alert. If you want to watch the movie first, click away, as I need to give some of the details of the plot in order to explain the coins and separate fact from fiction, so you have been warned. Alright, let's get started with this historical dumpster fire. When does Gladiator II take place? Well, Ridley Scott takes a lot of chronological liberties with these movies. The first movie begins with the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD, and then the director seems to forget that Commodus reigned for over 12 years, because the movie feels like everything happened over the course of a single year, and by the end of that year, Commodus was dead. At the beginning of Gladiator II, it says 16 years have passed since the first installment, which makes real history and the movies chronologically incompatible, adding 16 years to both the earliest and latest years of Commodus's reign, 180 and 192 AD respectively, would leave us in the reign of Emperor Septimius Severus, not in the reign of Caracalla and Geta. But you know what? Let's forget about this. Let's sweep the anachronisms under the carpet and just assume the movie takes place in 211 AD, the last year of the joint reign between Emperors Caracalla and Geta, some of the main villains of this movie. And you know what? What a wonderful clue to show a couple of coins of these men and show how they really looked like. The Caracalla and Geta from this movie look nothing like the real emperors. Ridley Scott just went with the old trope of the evil, degenerate, a bit effeminate, mad emperor of a corrupt and decadent Rome. There's a clear aesthetic of Nero and Caligula given to the brother emperors. Nero and Caligula are arguably some of the most famous emperors ever, precisely due to their bad behavior, and they serve as the perfect archetype for the mad and evil emperors, adapted for a large audience that might not know a lot about ancient Roman history, but will definitely go, yeah, Rome had a couple of crazy degenerate emperors, I can see them here. There are even a couple of small details given to Caracalla in particular that make him a perfect Caligula 2.0. There's this story that Caligula once made his horse a consul, and in the movie, Caracalla makes his little pet monkey a consul. Also, there's a moment when Geta comments about Caracalla's mental instability, saying something along the lines of, his illness is finally affecting his brain. Caligula's behavior drastically changed after some serious illness that nearly took his life when he was 25 years old. This illness, whatever it was, affected his brain and led him to basically become psychotic. This developing psychotic state was used in the movie as an excuse to make Caracalla break down emotionally and kill Geta. As in Gladiator II, the brothers seem to have a somewhat harmonious relationship between them. In reality, they absolutely hated one another. Caracalla did kill Geta in real life, but he did so he could rule by himself, not because he was insane. So how about we have a look at the real Caracalla? Let's check out one of his coins. Caracalla was a tough man. He was violent, easy to anger, relied on the support of the army and fear to rule. In fact, he had everything to be a great main villain for this movie, an authoritarian despot who ruled with an iron fist against the last descendant of a dynasty of enlightened monarchs, a wasted opportunity of a plot. This particular coin is a double denarius, a new denomination introduced by Caracalla. It was worth 2 denarii, but only had the silver weight of around 1.6 denarii, so this coin was a way to cheat on the people and strike more denarii to pay for imperial expenses with less available silver. On the obverse we have the bust of Caracalla. As we can see, an ill-tempered, bearded man with an almost fierce expression, wearing a cuirass under his imperial cloak. Very masculine figure, nothing like what we saw in the movies. On his head, he wears a radiate crown. You see, like the spiky little crown, made to differentiate this coin from the common single denarius, in which the emperor was depicted wearing a laurel crown instead. On the legends around the bust, we have the regnal name of the emperor, Antoninus Pius Augustus Germanicus. The name Caracalla was a nickname given to him, as he was very often seen wearing a type of cloak called a caracallus. That's another little thing that annoyed me in the movie. He's always called by his nickname, even in public occasions such as the games on the Colosseum. They would never call him by his nickname in such occasions. On the reverse, we continue with the authoritarian theme. We have an image of Jupiter, the king of the Roman pantheon of gods. He's standing up, he holds in one hand a long scepter, the symbol of power, and on the other, he holds his legendary thunderbolt, which he used to kill anyone who annoyed him. A reverse very fitting for the real Caracalla. Get in my way and get crushed. We have more legends on the reverse as well, and it is a continuation of the emperor's regnal name. These are a list of the public offices held by the emperor in the year this coin was made. It reads Pontifex Maximus, chief priest, as the emperor was also the chief of the Roman state religion, Tribunicia Potestas 18, having the powers of the tribune for the 18th year, consul for the 4th year, and finally Pater Patriae, meaning the father of the nation. Now let's get to Geta. The Geta in the movies is remarkably similar to Nero, from having his hair dyed red, apparently Nero was a redhead, to his particular taste for different and unique spectacles in the arena. Nero reigned at a time before the construction of the Colosseum, but he is credited with building another amphitheater made out of wood, specially engineered in a way that its central area, the fighting arena, could be flooded, and ships with gladiators could recreate naval battles. These were called naumachia. This is one of the coolest moments of the movie, I'm not going to lie. The naval battles are awesome, and the presence of sharks in the flooded arena gave me a good laugh. Alright, Geta. Let's have a look at the real emperor. Geta was the youngest brother of Caracalla. Their joint reign was very short, between February and December 211. That's why I said the movie must have taken place in that particular year. It was the only time they reigned together. Geta seems to have been less of a brute if compared to his brother. We don't have many official records of Geta, and not many statues of him have survived, since Caracalla decreed a damnation of his memory shortly after killing him. He basically ordered anything that publicly made references to Geta to be destroyed. He also purged the Roman elites of any known supporters of Geta. There's a famous contemporary painting showing the imperial family. In it, we see their father, Septimius Severus, their mother, Julia Domna, a young Caracalla to the right, and to the left, Geta's face has been erased in a clear show of how much they hated each other. Fortunately, Caracalla could not melt down all of the coins struck under Geta's name. Here's the denarius, struck in 210 AD, 1 year before the story of the movie was supposed to take place. Different to the previous coin, a double denarius with the spiky crown, here we have Geta wearing a laurel crown, meaning this coin is worth a single denarius. As an interesting curiosity, these coins are only 50% silver, from a 70% content when their father became emperor. The early 3rd century was a time of economic stagnation on the empire. They had to ensure the massively bloated army could be paid in time, but there simply wasn't enough silver entering the imperial coffers to pay for so many soldiers. So less and less silver was put on each individual coin, leading to a very serious inflation problem. Now, what a difference between the Geta from the movies and what we have here. Now, here we see another normal-looking, young, bearded man in his early 20s. One of the many reasons that made Caracalla hate Geta was that he looked a lot like their father. Geta seemed to enjoy a better relationship with their mother, who was herself very influential. He was more politically savvy than his brother, and was in better terms with the senatorial class as well. Caracalla, being older and more adept to military life, had more support from the army. But as Geta started letting his beard grow as he grew older, as we can see in this coin, in fact, the soldiers started to notice his remarkable similarities to his father, who they absolutely loved. That was the last drop for Caracalla. Geta was getting the upper hand politically the older he got. He just had to get rid of his brother, and that's exactly what he did. So around the portrait, we once again have the regnal name of the emperor. It reads, Imperator Caesar Publius Septimius Geta, Pius Augustus. On the reverse, it seems that Geta wanted to pass a more benign message with his coins. We have a portrait of Felicitas, the goddess of happiness. She holds in one hand a caduceus, the staff used by Mercury, the god of movement, trade, and commerce, and on her other hand, she holds a cornucopia, a magic horn that spewed an endless stream of grain, fruits, and all kinds of food from its mouth. As for the legends, we once more have the official titles held by Geta when this coin was made. It reads Pontifex, meaning priest. He wasn't Pontifex Maximus, as this title was held by the senior Augustus, Caracalla. Then it reads Tribunicia Potestas for the second year, and Consul for the second year. Now, on to the big baddie of the movie, Macrinus. It was very easy to identify the history nerds amongst ourselves when they announced a character called Macrinus. We all looked at each other and whispered, he's totally going to kill Caracalla, won't he? Yeah, he will. And that's exactly what happened. The character played by Denzel Washington is a reinterpretation, a complete reinterpretation of Caracalla's Praetorian prefect, Marcus Opellius Macrinus. He was not a man of noble birth. Macrinus was born in a family of middle-class equestrians in the unimportant province of Mauretania, modern-day Algeria. Despite being a Roman citizen, his family traced its origins from the Berber tribes of this region, and his appearance must have called some attention at Rome, with his likely darker skin tone and his pierced ears, something the Romans did not do, and surprisingly has been represented in the movie. While Denzel Washington plays a slave trader, the real Macrinus was a man of the military. He rose through the ranks, becoming Caracalla's Praetorian prefect. Considering his relatively humble origins, he must have reached this position by merit rather than political connections. Contemporary sources mention a prophecy from an oracle who told Caracalla that his Praetorian prefect would kill him. Luckily for Macrinus, he heard about the prophecy in time and decided to act preemptively. When Caracalla and his personal guards were visiting a temple in the eastern provinces of the empire, Macrinus bribed some of his soldiers to stab Caracalla to death. With Caracalla gone, and seeing himself in the position of one of the top men of the army, no one objected when Macrinus claimed the title of emperor to himself, not even the Senate back in Rome. Actually, the Senate was delighted to see Caracalla dead. So once again, we have a denarius of Macrinus, struck in 217 AD. He had a very short reign, between 217 and 218. From the little time he was emperor, however, we can at least assume the man could have been a decent leader. He tried to put an end to all of the wars initiated by Caracalla. In fact, he was so busy doing it that he never set foot in Rome during his reign. He signed a truce with the Parthians, he stabilized the Dacian and the Germanic frontiers, he raised the silver content of the denarius from 50 to 57%, something done by very few emperors, and he enacted a series of austerity measures to put the imperial budget back in something resembling an orderly state. And here's where Macrinus made a fatal mistake. His austerity measures also included cutting some of the generous cash bonuses given to the army, by far the most powerful institution in Rome at the time. This led to his downfall, as other members of the Severan dynasty promised to reinstate the army's fat paycheck. The troops then rebelled against Macrinus, defeated him in battle, and they just killed a potentially excellent emperor. So, let's take a look at this denarius in more detail. Here we have an interesting portrait of Macrinus with a short beard. The engravers at Rome did not know how the emperor looked like, so his first coin issues show him with a short beard. Later issues will correct this mistake, showing him as a middle-aged man with a long curly beard instead. Instead of wearing a cape over his cuirass, here we see Macrinus depicted ready for battle, wearing only his cuirass. As for the legends, it reads, Imperator Caesar Marcus Opelius Macrinus Augustus. On the reverse, we have Felicitas once again. Seems like Macrinus went with the same strategy as Geta, showing a more benign civic message. The goddess is holding on one hand the scepter and the caduceus on the other. The legends are slightly different this time. It begins with the expression vota publica, or public vows. This was a ceremony conducted by the emperor in which he publicly announced his dedication to serve the interests of the empire. I mean, in such unstable and violent times, this kind of ceremony was really just a formality, a reverence to the old republican ways, as the empire was, at least in technical terms, still a republic. Caracalla would not have bothered to attend such a ceremony, that's for sure. The rest of the legends reads, Pontifex Maximus Tribunicia Potestas, the other two official titles typically held by the emperor. And these titles were probably bestowed upon Macrinus by the Senate in his absence as a way to validate his position as an emperor upon the state and to maybe dissuade any pretenders that were in Rome at the time. You know, maybe Macrinus should have made more coins celebrating the army so he could buy their allegiance, and he should have purged the rest of the Severan dynasty to solidify his rule. Sadly, he seems to have been too soft in a time of hard, cruel men, and this just led to his fall. Next, let's discuss a character that I think should not have been in this movie, Lucilla. Lucilla was the daughter of Marcus Aurelius and sister of Emperor Commodus, the bad guy from the first movie. It makes zero sense to have Lucilla in the second installment of Gladiator because, well, if we consider the movie takes place in 211, she was supposed to be dead for nearly 30 years by then. Lucilla was one of the first people to notice Commodus's problematic tendencies, which led her to participate in a plot against her brother's life in 182. Commodus discovered the plot, killed everyone involved, had Lucilla exiled to Capri, out of the public eye, and then he sent an assassin to end her life a few months later. Quite a few coins were issued in Lucilla's name. Here's a denarius of her struck in 161 AD. celebrating her ascension to the rank of empress and her future marriage to Lucius Verus, co-emperor with Marcus Aurelius. On the obverse, we have a portrait of Lucilla with a very pretty hairstyle. We can see some braids on her hair going all the way back to the back of her head, where everything clumps together in this tight bun. The legends read, Lucillae Augusta, meaning to the Empress Lucilla, Antonini Augusta Filia, daughter of the Emperor Antoninus. Keep in mind that Marcus Aurelius' regnal name was Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, hence the name Antoninus on the coin, which he preferred to use in official ceremonies and official titles, instead of Marcus Aurelius, which was his common given name. As for the reverse, we have an image of the goddess Vesta. Vesta protected the home, the family. In a way, she represented the rare feeling of safety from the unforgiving and brutal life in the ancient world. The idea here is very clear. It shows that Lucilla will provide a protective, safe environment for Lucius and the descendants they would raise together. Sadly, as we will see in a minute, it would not turn out that way. Vesta is seen here holding in one hand a palladium, a small sacred statue of Athena, and with the other hand she offers a liquid sacrifice in a small pot called a patera over a small fiery altar. A small fire was also an important symbol of Vesta for the warmth and coziness it provided. Now, how about our main protagonist, the young Lucius Verus? He did exist, but he died when he was very young. Lucilla had 3 children with Lucius Verus Sr. Aurelia Lucilla, Lucilla Plautia, and Lucius Verus. Lucius and Aurelia died young. Child mortality was very high in the ancient world, and it didn't spare the rich and powerful either. There's an interesting series of coins of Lucilla featuring on its reverse the image of fecunditas, the representation of female fertility. I'm putting an image of a wonderful sestertius of this type on screen now. On the reverse of this coin, we can see a seated female figure taking care of 3 kids. This is very likely a representation of Lucilla with her 3 children, and is the closest we can get to an image of the real-life Lucius Verus and the protagonist of the movie. Okay, I think I covered all of the characters in this movie that were featured on coins, but I want to make an honorable mention to an amazing woman that should have been in this film, and her absence is a gigantic missed opportunity. Ridley Scott, where is Julia Domna? Instead of insisting on featuring Lucilla, a character so out of place in this movie, we could have had Julia, the mother of Caracalla and Geta, one of the most interesting and politically influential women of Roman history. Her presence would have opened so many opportunities for an interesting story. Who is this Julia Domna? You see, the father of Caracalla and Geta, Septimius Severus, became emperor after winning a very bloody civil war. In his early reign, the only real support Septimius had was from the army. Julia worked really hard on the background of politics to give her husband and her sons the legitimacy they needed with the senatorial class and the common people. Julia was highly intelligent. She helped build the identity of this new imperial family that took power after a century of the previous Antonine emperors. She was often seen among senators and important philosophers. She accompanied her husband and her sons in their campaigns, earning the love of the common soldier. She was an outstanding woman, full of energy, politically influential, and a well-recorded historical figure that could have taken this movie, the story of this movie, in some super interesting directions. So how about we have a look at Denarius of our dear Julia Domna then. This piece was struck between the years 198 and 200. Notice how the style of this denarius looks different from the pieces from the Rome mint that I showed earlier. It looks more abstract, more stylized, I would say maybe a little bit more cartoonish. This coin was struck at an Eastern mint, probably in the city of Laodicea. Around this time, Rome was at war with Parthia, its Eastern rivals, and this mint was most likely quickly installed there in the East to provide a steady supply of money to the troops, rather than having to ship the silver all the way from Rome. On the obverse, we have the portrait of Julia, and she has her hair done in a similar way to that of Lucilla, tightly tied to a bun on the back of her hair, although we can clearly appreciate here that her hair had a different texture to that of Lucilla. Hers was much curlier. The legends are pretty simple. Julia Augusta, Julia the Empress, although she had lots of other honorary titles added to her name throughout her long, quote-unquote, political career. Women didn't really have political careers, but she was the closest to having something like this. On the reverse, we have hilaritas, the incarnation of happiness, lightheartedness, a trait very valued on a Roman woman, especially a Roman matron like Julia Domna. It is said that she was always seen very energetic when she was out in public, especially with her husband. Sadly for Julia, the spirit of happiness, the spirit of hilaritas, would not be with her for very long. After the death of Septimius, Caracalla and Geta became co-emperors. They absolutely hated one another, and Julia was the only person capable of mediating any meetings between the two. She couldn't do it for long though. One evening in 211, Julia tried yet again to arrange a meeting with the brothers so they could rule this empire together. Caracalla had other plans. He stormed the apartment with his bodyguards and stabbed Geta to death. Geta tried taking refuge on her mother's arms, but it was for nothing. Julia lost her son, brutally murdered by her other son on her arms. So tragic. Caracalla forbade her to cry for her son. Her last years under Caracalla were spent in sadness and relative obscurity. And when she heard the news of Caracalla's death in 217, Julia, by then suffering of breast cancer in its late stages, took her own life. Julia deserved so much better, and I think we, history lovers, also deserve one day to see the story of Julia Domna in a movie, because she really deserves it. And there we have it, the coins of Gladiator II. Did you go to the theaters to watch it? Let us know what you think of the movie in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.